Hi, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video on E-manGames channel. This is going to be a rogue deck profile. Very sad to say that it's definitely a rogue, very rogue deck, this format, and it's going to be Paleos because a lot of you guys requested it under the last video that I did. So I just took some time and just threw together a Paleo version that I think is somewhat viable this format. Like personally, I have to say it's definitely not among the best decks this format. But I think if you just want to go to like a regional and have some fun and I think you can do like reasonably well with this, or like you can change it to some extent. I'm gonna name some cards I'm gonna discuss some stuff that I think can also be played in this. But yeah, this is something that I made. It's basically a version with Demise, not many hand traps. I personally think that Demise is necessary in this format in Paleo to keep up with the card advantage that other decks gain, especially like going second. I don't feel like throwing one hand trap at Orcust is going to help you win the game more than just drawing 3 with Demise. I think that's something you would probably prefer this format, but you can definitely also try out a hand trap version if you think that's wrong. It might be. I haven't invested much time in actually testing Paleos this format simply because it's a deck that like it really has to go first this format, to be honest. There's just no good solution to going second in Paleo, because Paleo has always been a very slow deck, and the decks at the moment, if they go first, and they just accumulate so much advantage, like Orcust or Salamangreat, and they are so hard to stop with just one single hand trap that it's just very hard for Paleo going second. That's why I think you should just try and go for the card of Demise to just like blow them out. So the deck is 3 Backjack. I wanted to include Backjack because I think that Fiend Griefing is really good, and Backjack helps you dig into the card of Demise and Pot of Desires, which is really cool because you can like get to see the top 3 and then put the normal trap at the top and then the power spell at the second, which is also one of the key components of my 60 card Paleo that I won YCS Prague with. It was really good to be able to put the card of Demise or Desires, or back then it was also with Grass Looks Greener, to draw one of the 9 power spells on your next turn. And then obviously 3 Swap, 3 Dupe, and 2 Ronin. You can definitely consider one Dupe Frog less, just cutting 1 Dupe Frog to make it 10 monsters. Yeah, I was just worried that if you do that and you banish 1 or 2 with Desires, then you might lose the grind game because you can't banish anything for Ronin Totem, but maybe that's just not an issue this format. Maybe you should just do something like this. Probably. It is worth a consideration. I would start trying 3 Dupe Frogs, but if you draw too many monsters, definitely go down to 2. And then yeah, 3 Demise, 3 Desires, sadly no grass anymore. I considered Pot of Extravagance, but I actually am not sure if that's a good idea, because you'll very often probably draw into more cards that draw, like, because with 3 Extravagance you'd have 9 draw spells and then you'd often draw into another one. But since you plan on playing multiple turns anyways with Paleo, that might be fine. So if you have the money for Extravagance, you can definitely try out like a version with more cards even. And Extravagance, you definitely have to adjust the extra deck a little bit to fit, to not risk like losing your only Miss Starboy or something. I'll talk about that when I get to the extra deck, what I would change if I play Extravagance. So yeah, that's it for the spells. I thought about Foolish. It's like the only card that I consider right now in this deck. Foolish is cool because you can like get another frog for Ronin Totem, or you can get the Backjack for its effect, which is pretty cool. But if you already have like a Fiend Griefing, then the Foolish is kind of useless, so that's why I didn't include it here. For the Paleos, there's less Paleos here because Paleos in general are worse at the moment because they are so slow, right? When this deck was, in my opinion, the best deck in the format was 2017 in Zoo format, where everything was a lot slower. Like, you could afford to draw like a couple Paleos that weren't so impactful, like Morella or Leoncolia. and still be fine. But Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten so fast-paced that drawing many Paleos, like drawing many Morellas, is just not gonna do anything this format. Because back then it was okay to just Morella into Lost Wind and then set it and then wait for a turn and it'd be still useful because Zoo didn't kill you. But Orcust and Salamangreat and like Thunder Dragon, that's a different story. So Olenoids is definitely the best one. Just because it's so simple, good against everything right now. Because most decks, or like except for Thunder, but like any other deck has at least some back row or some like Bobble or something. So card's always useful. Dynamiscus is really good. It can be cloggy with the mice sometimes, but you have ways to get cards on your opponent's turn to your hand. Like you have Reckless, and also you can first Dynamiscus, discard Backjack, and then next turn you can card a demise. So that's kind of cool. Canadia is weird with link monsters because you can't book link monsters, but on the other hand, if you get it down before they link summon, it's really good. Or if you manage to like Canadia their Dingirso in the extra monster zone, it basically locks them out of the extra deck until their next turn, until they can flip it back up, so that's cool. 2 Morella, the card is way too slow right now, unfortunately. The problem is just that you need to open Paleos, otherwise you're just not playing. You're only throwing traps at your opponent, but you're not getting anything done. So I figured that you need 2 Morella to at least have the option with Trap Trick to get Morella. If you don't have any Paleos, you definitely need to get some. Like if you draw like four real traps and Trap Trick, you can definitely Trap Trick for Morella like somewhere near the end of the opponent's turn, and then you have 2 Paleos at least to make the first Toad. I put 2 Vabokus because I think the card is kind of interesting against Orcust. I played this card back in my 40 card Paleo at YCS Bochum in also 2017 or the end of 2016 was it, where I played Billy in the finals. I think in that format Vaboku was really cool because you would just summon a bunch of Paleos and then Vaboku and the decks couldn't do anything about it, and it's kind of similar to this format. Like Orcust, they can't remove the Paleos because they're all unaffected by monster effects and that's all they have. Same for Salamangreat, if they can't attack them, that's cool. So I think that if you have a bunch of good trap cards already with Paleos, you can just Trap Trick into Vaboku at the end of when they try to enter battle phase, and then you just have like 2 or 3 Paleos maybe if you drew a bunch of them and they can't kill them, and then you're gonna link into Toads next turn, which is cool. Not link into Toads, you're gonna make him a Star Boy and then a Toad under it, and that helps you beat over like 2700 beats over most of the meta, and you get going that way because you have to make sure that your Paleos stay on the board, otherwise you're just wasting all of your resources. So 3 Trap Trick is one of the best additions to this deck lately. Well, lately it's been out for a while, but like it's a good addition to Paleos definitely because it's 1 trap card that gives you 2 activations, and it also gives you any trap that you want from your deck, which is really cool. You have to be careful though. You have to use it very late in your opponent's turn, because otherwise you can only use 1 trap after you do it. So you'll definitely have to be careful with using Trap Trick. Like of course, sometimes you want a certain trap really early, but you should normally try to use up your other traps first, because you get really vulnerable if you Trap Trick into something and use it early on in their turn, and then you can't use any other traps. So yeah. Compose, one of the best cards in this deck. Used to be at 1 back then. Now it's at 3, and that's really good because this card is one of the cards that is good going second, at least at breaking boards. That's what I try to include in this version. As you see, there's no Strike or Solemn in this main deck, because I just think these are way too focused on going first in this format. Like they are okay going second, but you need cards like Compose. Yeah, so like this deck has a really hard time at beating Masquerena, but I think all the other openings you can beat without a hand trap if you draw a decent hand at dealing with the board, like Compulses and stuff like that. Like Dynamicious, Trap Trick, all these cards are pretty good at going second as well. So yeah, Impermanence is the only hand trap, so-called, because it's actually a trap, and it's also really good with Trap Trick because you can decide which zone to put it in on your opponent's turn, which is kind of cool. You can turn off something like multi-roll when well, you didn't know where they would put it, so they put it somewhere. You put impermanence in the same zone, so that's kind of cool. Best trap in my opinion is Fiend Griefing, because this card is an actual really good disruption in this format. Like back then when I played this in my 60 card Paleo, it wasn't even a good trap most of the time. I would just use it to get some little advantage, but the main part was sending backjack to get another trap, which is really good. Like you get to choose the best trap out of the next 3 cards, and you also get to decide which card you draw next for your next draw phase, which is really good. But in this format, like against Orcus, Salamangre, even Sky Striker against Ray, this card is really good. Shuffling back like a Harp Horror or whatever it is, or Spinny, or you know all the graveyard effects. Essentially, the reason why Crow is good this format is also the reason why this card is good this format, and it also sends backjack on top of it. So that's really good. Definitely one of the reasons why I think like how you can win with this deck is by just disrupting your opponent enough on their first turn, triggering maybe 1 or 2 Paleos, and then next turn you take control with Toads. Or like 1 Toad most of the time, let's be realistic. And then Lost Wind is just a card that I think is decent in this deck if you draw it, because it's a good negation against Orcus, for example. Sadly, can't hit the normal summon of like Armageddon Knight, Mathematician, so on and so forth, but it's definitely decent to hit like Galatea or Dingirsu and then get it back immediately, so you can use it on your turn again. So this also shuts down Masquerena. Like if you go first and Lost Wind something, then you get it back later, they can't really go into Masquerena because you can just negate it. It'll also protect you from Dingirsu on your turn, which is cool, and it's 2 trap activations in 1 card, so I think that's kind of cool. Reckless Greed is a card that I always love this card in Paleo, because it's just it's not an actual defensive trap. It's the card that lets you turn on the aggressive mode, right? It lets you just flip the card, bring back a Paleo, draw 2 new cards. Afterwards, I really like to go into Opabinia to trigger more Paleos. The thing is, this card, because it's not a protective card, it can also just be this format. If it's too fast, then maybe Reckless Greed is not good. It's like the card that I added last here in this deck list, because I wasn't sure if it was going to be good enough. I always love the formats where you can play Paleo in the slow version, the slow grindy version. Which is also why I put no floodgates in here, because if you want to try this deck is going to be a fun deck, right? For regionals, locals, these kind of things. It's not supposed to be tier 1 Paleo deck profile, right? I'm trying to have fun with this deck, and this is the version that I think I would have the most fun with this format. That's why I put Reckless in, and that's why you're not seeing any stupid floodgates in here. Like, of course, if I was going to go to a tournament, I'd definitely at least side deck something like Summon Limit, because if you can like Summon Limit on their turn, summon 2 Paleos, they can probably not kill both because you Summon Limit it, and then you just overlay into Toad next turn, and you go from there, right? How do they beat Summon Limit Toad in any meta deck right now? They don't. So that should be somewhere. So if you play this deck for an event, I'm going to talk about side deck cards as well. You should put some of them in the side deck. It's not a main deck card in my opinion, just because it just puts the focus on going first so much. So side deck here is some cards that I consider options for the main deck as well. This one I think is a very decent option, but mainly for siding. I thought about main decking this card, but I think because Twin Twister is a side deck staple in any deck, it's not a card that is usually main decked. I think this card should be sided. However, it is really good post side, because like I said, everyone is going to play Twin Twister. Most people are going to play something like Pancratops as well. So yeah, this card's kind of new for you. If you don't know, the effect is basically when your opponent activates a card that would destroy a card on the field, you could negate the effect and then send a level 3 Dark from your deck to the graveyard, so it also sends Backjack. So that's really cool. Like, imagine negating a Twin Twister and sending Backjack for another trap card. It's basically a +2 instantly, so that's really cool. Yeah. Cards that I considered maining are obviously Solemns. Strike, I just felt like was a little bit too focused on going first, but it's definitely a good card. Also, I already had 47 cards. The thing is, I think it's fine to go over 40 in this deck because you don't want to draw the backjack, and as long as you see one of your spells, you are usually consistent enough. And I think that happens at like between 45 and 50 with 6 power spells, or even 9 if you put Extravagance. I think you're fine. But yeah, because I didn't want to go too high on cards, I didn't want to include the strike in the main deck. If you like, you can try it out, definitely. It's a good main deck card, I think. Solemn Judgment is something that, because this card is even worse going second than strike, I think this card is a side deck card, because post side you'll definitely need this card for Evenly Matched and Red Reboot. The cards are not in every deck, but they are somewhere, and Solemn Judgment is a really good card anyways for going first, so you might as well put that in. I definitely side deck this card 100%. Get Out is a card that is really good if it ever resolves. It's basically a better compulse, so against any deck that makes boards with more than one extra deck monster, you definitely want Get Out in your deck, even going second, especially also with Trap Trick, you have like a really good chance at seeing it. And certain decks definitely, like the Thunder deck, for example. Against the Thunder deck, I definitely try to put this card in, and I actually think that the Thunder deck is not that much of a terrible matchup going second, because they have like Colossus you don't care about, Harbinger you also most of the time don't care about, because you only play 6 spells, you won't have one all the time. Sometimes you just don't have one, or stuff like that, and then you just like Get Out on their turn. Like, you don't care about Appaloosa either most of the time, so it's kind of cool. And they don't have much to negate traps unless they end on Dawn Dragster like randomly, or Savage, but you have some stuff to bait that out. So that card is really good against these matchups. Another card that's really good against these matchups is Needle Sealing, which I didn't include in this side deck here. But this is not a side deck, this is just some good trap cards overall. Heavy Storm Duster as well is a card that I definitely consider main decking. I just think that because against Orchist and Salamangreat, it's just not the main focus to hit the back row. So I think this is also a card that you should side more often than main it. Other stuff that you can definitely consider for your side deck is Gameciel. You can definitely consider hand traps for going second if you like that. Like, if you know the matchup, there are some hand traps that are really good, like Lancea, which also covers Evenly Matched against Orcust. Nibiru can be really good against the combo decks. You can play Gamma if you know you're going second. It's one of the strongest hand traps going second. Yeah, stuff like that. Extra deck is 3-Toad, obviously, the best card. Sadly, not many rank 2 XYZs. Master Rule 4 hits this deck more than you'd think, just because it prevents you from going multiple Toads, because you have to basically make Miss Starboy first and then another Toad, and then you need another 2 monsters to make the second Toad. So instead of 4 monsters, you need 6 for double Toad. But one thing you can very often do is go into the Opabinia and turn that Opabinia into Miss Starboy, and then you can often make a Toad under this, because the Opabinia will usually enable you to like trigger at least 1 or 2 more summons. I put Anomalocaris in. I think this is very optimistic. I don't know if you ever make this, but if you do make it, it's a really good disruption, and actually a really good card. So yeah, and then one of the rank 2s that I think you'll definitely make sometimes is Centaurea, because it will basically out anything, which is really cool. So yeah, that guy should be in here. Linkuriboh is really good. It is a cool addition because it makes drawing backjack actually not bad. Because instead, like back in the day, we'd have to set it and just hope that it would die. But now you can just immediately turn it into Linkuriboh and just get the bonus effect of just looking at the top 3 cards and choosing the best trap. Basically, it's kind of cool. Mr. Arboy, obviously, you can definitely consider 2 of this if you want to cut one of the other ones. Marine says, the card looks better than it is. It just reborns a water, and then you can't special summon for the rest of the turn except for water monsters. The secondary effects are irrelevant because we don't run Marine Cess cards. So it sounds cool, right? You can just reborn any water monster, but the problem is you have to use 2 water monsters for this. So that could just be your Toad right here, right? Instead of making this, you can make a Toad, or you can make a Miss Starboy, or you can make Opabinia. And compared to these cards, I think this is mediocre. but I think it can still come up. Like if you have 3 monsters, for example, this card will always come up when you have 3 monsters, because with 3 monsters you can't make double toad anyways. So you will just make this, reborn one of the monsters, and then make a toad under it. So you basically get a free 2000 body up there, and also the toad is now not in your extra deck zone, in your extra monster zone. It's down there in your main monster zone, so if the Marincess Coral Anemone dies, you can just make another toad up there, which is cool. And it also, if it survives on the next turn, you can like link up with her, because she's a link too. You can easily make Unicorn or one of your rank 4s, which is cool. Just not on the same turn, because you can only use it. You can only use water monsters afterwards. I put Nightmares in just because they're like a go-to utility thing. Honestly, I don't think you'll need much of your extra deck except for Toads, Opabinia, Miss Starboy, and sometimes this guy. The rest is like utility. So triple Nightmare, and then the good rank 4s. Yeah, not much to say about these. Yeah. Honestly, this is just a deck that looks really fun to me. That's why I made it. I don't think it's supposed to be super competitive or anything. Don't expect that. On the other hand, though, I don't think it'll do badly. I think it'll do fine. Basically, every game where you win the dice roll is definitely winnable, and every game where your opponent doesn't like super combo you on turn 1 is also winnable. Like this deck is only really vulnerable to Masquerena, I think. Like against the Salamangreat opening, yes, if they open Rage with 2 pops, it's really hard, but they don't always go for Rage blind, right? Most people go for like a Dweller turn 1 or even the Counter Trap, and these openings are definitely beatable. Sky Striker is also beatable, I think, actually. It's hard, but if you get rid of the multi-roll, which they only have 1 of nowadays, and if you Dynamiscus it, it's gone. I think it's fine, because there can be only 1. Does fuck you up, but you have like a lot of main deck outs to it, and you can side really cool cards. Oh, one card that I wanted to mention is also White Howling. You can definitely play that, which is really cool. One of the cards you can, if you have trouble against Sky Striker, and Sky Striker is played in your area, like many people, you can definitely put that card into your side deck. Even just the 2-off, right? All of these traps, like the cool thing about these traps is you can put 2-offs and they'll still be really available, because you have 3 Trap Trick and Backjack to get into Trap Trick or the card itself. So it's like really likely that you'll find the cards in time. Another card that you can definitely consider is Torrential Tribute, because that card is also good going second. You just set it, and if they commit more, you just blow up the board, which is really cool. So yeah, thinking about that, I'd probably actually put Torrential in this. I forgot about Torrential. Torrential seems really good. Yeah. Because Torrential is also something you can bring out like in response to them activating an effect. Like if they activate Harp Horror, for example, to summon, you can chain Backjack or Trap Trick to get Torrential and just blow up the board, and they can't really respond to it anymore. So that's kind of cool. You just have to be careful of Dingirsu if you play Torrential, and you also have to be careful of Baelings. So yeah, that's something to consider. Torrential. Yeah, if you actually, it'd be the only card in your deck that destroys monsters. So it's like the only card that triggers Baelings and Dingirsu protection. So maybe it's a little bit too vulnerable to these guys. Something to consider. Yeah, would be worth a try. So yeah, basically I'm just waiting for a format for Paleo to be good again. But it's definitely a fun deck. I love the grind games in Paleo. As you can see, there's no floodgates in here. Paleo can play floodgates, don't get me wrong. You can play Rivalry, Goes in Match. Unfortunately, these cards are not very good this format, because like all of Warcrest is Machine Dark, all of Salamangreat is Fire Cybers, so they're pretty useless. And the only good floodgate this format, which is like there can be only one, Paleo can't play because it ruins themselves. So yeah, Paleo is definitely the least cancer trap deck this format, which unfortunately probably also makes it the worst this format. But yeah, maybe someday I'll bring Paleo to a YCS again. I'm always looking out for opportunities. So this was the Paleo deck profile you guys requested from me, and I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed the deck. I hope you play it and have some fun with it. Let me know how it goes. Let me see your builds. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't already. And I'm out. Bye.